2, and 1. Welcome everybody back into another episode of Crypto's News, where we often give you news of the day that's important. We also give you awesome interviews, including one with someone I'm very happy to welcome back to the show. I believe this is the third time he's on the show. And honestly, I'm excited that Roger's always willing to take a little bit of his very busy day to come out and speak to us as we see important developments in this industry, especially in these early days, I would wager still. So welcome back to the show, Roger. How are you doing? Same. Can you actually really quickly give us one more quick mic check? Let me make sure that everything is okay here. Yep. Hopefully everybody can hear us. Is everything okay? Everything all right? One more time, Roger, please. I should have done this before. Yeah, I'll have to clip this section out, actually. Looks like we're actually not getting any sound from you for some reason. That usually doesn't happen. Let me try one more thing. Yeah, it's so odd. We might just have to start over here. One more time, Roger? Oh, not yet. Let's actually redo the stream. I'm sorry about that, guys, and we'll get that hammered out right away. Okay, so everyone, we have hammered out the audio issues we had previously, but I want to again welcome Roger Ver, who's always taken the time to be on this show every single time some sort of new major development is happening in this nascent industry. And I welcome you, Roger. How are you doing? He's one of the world's first Bitcoin investors and seeders and startups that you're probably very familiar with now because of their influence in the cryptocurrency industry, including companies like BitPay, including Coinbase, Kraken, Ripple Foundation. It goes really far. So welcome back again, Roger. How are you doing?
Yeah, thank you, Omar. So
yeah,
great to talk to you again.
Yeah. So there's all sorts of issues going on around and controversies that are really confusing the community, maybe even dividing it again with what's going on right now with the proposal by Bitcoin ABC to go ahead and integrate a infrastructure funding plan that would take 8% of the block reward to give to developers that in theory would go ahead and put that money towards development of Bitcoin Cash to make it a contender into the future, especially now with so many competitors, you could say, or participants rather, in this space where there are so many different blockchains trying to do DeFi and do this. They are trying to integrate a subsidy of the block reward that would go to them to go ahead and fuel this ecosystem. But you've been an advocate against that, as has, you could argue, probably most of the community in Bitcoin Cash right now. So that's going to definitely be a big focus of this while you begin going forward. But I wanted to ask you, Roger, for those viewers who aren't familiar with you, who don't know who you are, would you like to give us a quick introduction from your perspective as to how you found Bitcoin early on and what led you to be an investor? What was it that you saw in companies like Coinbase, Ripple? You know, how did you find Bitcoin and hear about these companies and decide to actually put capital into them?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, I was the first person in the world to start investing in the companies in this ecosystem back when there weren't really any companies. And I have to clarify a little bit on the Coinbase aspect of that. So like most people won't know this, but blockchain.com back then used to be blockchain.info, and blockchain.info and Coinbase used to be the same company. Brian Armstrong and Ben Reeves got started together, and then they kind of had a difference of a vision there. The blockchain.com or .info back then guy wanted people to have their own keys, and Brian thought that it would be just fine for Coinbase to hold everybody's keys, and both have actually kind of worked out just fine so far. But the big fear, and I was definitely on the side of people should have their own keys, and the big fear is that someday if you have some entity like Coinbase that's holding a whole bunch of Bitcoins and governments are out of money because people are stopping to use the dollar and they're starting to use Bitcoin or some other cryptocurrency, they then become a great big giant juicy target for governments to come in and say, give us all your Bitcoin, just like they did historically to the entities that were holding gold reserves for people. And it was made illegal for people to own gold in the US previously. If everyone's using custodial solutions for their Bitcoin, the same thing could happen again to Bitcoin, where it's made illegal for people to hold it themselves, and it's easily confiscatable because everybody was busy using a custodian to hold it for them. So anyhow, and I've never, ever been a Bitcoin maximalist. People always ask me from day one, well, what happens when something better than Bitcoin comes along? And I always tell them, well, great. I hope something better than Bitcoin does come along, because then we all get to use that. Just like I hope something better than the current, edition iPhone comes along. And that's why I went and funded, I was literally the second person ever to be involved in Ripple. I put up the seed money to start that. And then same with Z coin. And then I was in the, the kind of the first batch of people to fund the creation of Zcash and a number of others out there as well. So I've never, ever been a Bitcoin maximalist. I've always been a whatever actually works for people as peer-to-peer electronic cash for the world, because that's what makes me so excited, is giving people the ability to buy and sell and do whatever they want without needing permission from a government, and not have to watch, the debates between Trump and Biden and this and that, and then worry about, oh, what's that going to mean for my money next year? Let's put everybody in charge of their own money and not need to get permission from these politicians. So that's what had me so excited about the space. And here I am a decade later, still just as excited for those exact same reasons, is we need peer-to-peer electronic cash for the world. And that's what I'm busy trying to build and advocate.
Right. You have a very interesting story, actually, from what led you to these kinds of ideals that have led you to follow sound money like Bitcoin and unconfiscatability, and get upset kind of with the way the political landscape works with these kinds of debates. And it's all kind of nonsense to me as well, where they're just shouting back and forth. You probably read about the interruptions. I unfortunately got to watch them live. It was another crap show. I don't know what else to have expected, but your early forays into Bitcoin and discovering it came from an incident that led to you actually going to jail or prison for a while. Would you like to give us some details as to what that looked like, and do you think that the law maybe treated you wrong in the way that worked out?
We've opened a whole, and at some point I should write a book on all the things that went around in regards to that. But basically, when I was a young man, I started studying economics, and I definitely wasn't born a libertarian at all. But it kind of got started. I guess Milton Friedman was kind of like, he's not nearly as radical of a libertarian as I am now, but I started reading, books by Milton Friedman. And the part that kind of really caught my attention was this idea called bracket creep. And he explains why governments like inflation, but they like inflation not just because they can print money and spend it on the things that they want, but when they print money and spend it on the things that they want, and it causes inflation on everything, everybody's wages get bumped up a little, year after year due to the inflation. And because we have a graduated income tax after a few years of inflation, suddenly now someone's earning $100,000 a year, which is only the same as, earning $20,000 a year back in the 70s. But now they're in a, 45% tax bracket, whereas if they were only earning $20,000 still, they'd be in a much lower tax bracket. So it's basically a secret, sneaky way for governments to bump people into higher tax brackets than they would be otherwise, even though they're not actually earning any more, money to spend each year in real terms. And so I thought, wow, that's really sneaky that they do this. And the more economics I studied, the more I realized that governments all over the planet are busy manipulating money and controlling the money and basically using it to distort the way the world's economy works, because money transmits the information of what people want and what people want in their lives. And then it tells you, like, for example, I have some water here. Should this water be made, out of a plastic bottle or a gold bottle or who knows what it should be made out of? And then should it be made, locally here or shipped from some other place in the world? And it's all the pricing mechanism, like the company that makes the plastic and then the company that prints the labels and the caps and who knows what else they have here. All of that, the prices tell the world what resources should be used to produce what consumer goods. And if you disrupt the pricing mechanism, you're disrupting the cooperation of all these millions of people all over the world to be able to cooperate as effectively and efficiently as they otherwise would have been. And so the more I studied this, the more I realized, wait a minute, we need to get the government the heck out of the business of issuing money and get them out of the economy as much as we possibly can, so that the entire world can become a wealthier, happier, more peaceful place for everybody. And if you look all over the world, that's the first thing every government controls, is the money and what people can and can't do with their money and who they can and can't pay and this and that. And suddenly when Bitcoin came along, I was excited about that, but we jumped a little too far ahead.
No, that was good. I didn't know that about. I had never thought about that and how they increase wages through inflation to put you in higher tax brackets. Now it seems even more extortive in a way I hadn't considered before. Thanks
Yeah,
for sharing that.
it's so sneaky. Yeah, if you've never had it
Yeah.
pointed out to you, you wouldn't realize that. But like, if you get bumped into a higher tax bracket because of inflation, now you're paying a higher income tax rate. You're
Yeah.
losing more of your money to the government there. But it happens gradually year after year. So it's sneaky. And I think a lot of people also don't realize money transmits information. It transmits what everybody's preference is for everything, everywhere, all over the world. And if governments are blocking those payments or blocking the money from transmitting that information, it's a form of censorship, right? Like there's words that come out of my mouth which express my preferences, but there's also the things that I choose to spend my money on, which expresses my preferences. And if you block me from being able to plastic rather than bottles that are made out of glass, that's a problem, and that's a distortion of the world's economy. And when you distort the world's economy, it's not as effective or as efficient as it otherwise would have been, and everyone winds up being poorer than they otherwise would have been. So when I started to figure all this out from reading all these books, I thought, wait a minute, everybody needs to know about this, because if everybody understands the world more clearly, we can take more effective actions, and the world will be a prosperous, more wealthy place for everybody. So I decided to run for California State Assembly as a libertarian. And even at that point, I was already basically, a voluntarist. I said if I were elected, I wouldn't accept any salary whatsoever, because that salary would come from people paying taxes, and maybe those people wouldn't want to have to pay my salary. So I wasn't going to accept any salary whatsoever. And I said I would repeal as many laws and taxes as I possibly could. And this was in the year 2000. And just a few years before that, there was this big incident that lots of people in the cryptocurrency space maybe have never heard of. But there was a church in Waco, Texas, and the adults involved in that church, they were a bit, of the religious nut type. But, there's plenty of religious nuts in the world of all sorts of different religions. And in that church, there were dozens of kids, right, like less than 12 years old. And the U.S. government wanted to arrest the main leader of the church there. And even if you want to call them a cult, that's just fine. I wouldn't argue with that. But cultists are people too, and they're living human beings. And basically, what happened is the U.S. government burnt to the ground that entire church, including I should have looked up the exact numbers before this call here, but somewhere in the ballpark of maybe 35 kids less than 12 years old. They literally burnt them to death until they died. And even if their parents are religious nuts, if you're just a kid, it's not your fault. If anything, you deserve a chance to escape from that sort of life. And instead, the U.S. government literally burnt to death, pretty much everybody in the whole building there. So in reference to that, I called the FBI and ATF, who were responsible for that, directly. I called them a bunch of jackbooted thugs and murderers. And it turns out the FBI doesn't like it when you call them jackbooted thugs and murderers. And so then I wound up being the only person in the entire nation to be prosecuted for selling this product I was selling on eBay. It's called a Pest Control Report 2000. It's basically a firecrackers used by farmers to scare, birds out of their cornfield or whatever. And even while I was in prison, the same company I had been buying them from was still selling the exact same product with no license. The manufacturer was making them with no license. I was the only person in the entire history of the United States to ever be prosecuted for selling those. Everybody else eventually was just told to stop selling them. And I sold a couple thousand pieces. The manufacturer, I think, made hundreds of thousands or millions of them, right? But sometimes it seems like at the time something's happening to you, it seems like it's a bad thing. But in hindsight, maybe that was kind of a good thing, because then I was in federal prison, and I got to see firsthand in the prison economy that all these theories that I had read about in books, that the theories were actually true in practice. And so people just naturally started using the things that were the most suitable as money. And so examples of that were tobacco, of course, because tobacco you can store for a long time. It's easily divisible. It's easily recognizable. There's not fake tobacco floating around in the prison. And then it has another use. People like to smoke it, right? So there's the use case. And so people use tobacco. They use top ramen soups, because same thing. You can store them in your locker for forever. They're not counterfeit. You can easily, one doesn't have a high value, so each one's 25 cents or something. So people were using top ramen soups as money, and then they were also using postage stamps. And so all of these things worked very well as money, because all of them also, they were easily portable, easily divisible, easily recognizable, and then they had a use as well. Whether it's smoking or mailing a letter or eating the soups, they all had this use case. So when Bitcoin finally came along, about a decade after I'd already been out of prison, I had all the empirical evidence from my time in prison, and then the theoretical evidence from all these books that I read to make me have absolutely no doubt in my mind whatsoever that people were going to start using Bitcoin as money. And so as a somewhat successful entrepreneur already at that point, I took the capital that I had from my previous businesses, bought a pile of Bitcoin, and then started investing in all the first generation of businesses, everything from blockchain to Kraken to BitPay to pretty much the entire of cryptocurrency businesses. And today, I guess I'm a little bit opportunity. In 2015 and 2016, everybody was starting to accept Bitcoin. We had Microsoft and Dell Computer and Tiger Direct and Newegg and Expedia, and it was just, we were on a roll. And governments and politicians move slowly. And if we had really managed to roll this out to the whole world fast enough, we could have had Bitcoin being used by money for the entire world, and it would have been too late for governments to really realize what happened. And instead, there's this whole nasty civil war that went on within Bitcoin that delayed adoption by at least half a decade, if not more. And now there's thousands of cryptocurrencies, and people are confused, which one should I use for this and which one should I use for that? And everybody kind of knows me as a Bitcoin Cash fan at this point, but I'm a fan of any.
Sorry, Roger. Hello, Roger. Looks like we're having some connection issues here. I definitely want to get that point because it looks like he was going somewhere well there. Hello, Roger. Thanks for the patience, guys. Roger's in St. Kitts, beautiful St. Kitts. And maybe the internet connection is not as good there. But it looks like we lost him for a second there. How is everyone doing? I hope your day is going well so far. I encourage you to keep an open mind, and I do want to also let you know that this interview is coupled with another interview with Amaury Sachet that happened recently. I think it was 3 videos ago, so definitely check that one out if you want to get a complete picture of what went on with what's going on with BCH, so you can get both sides of the new debate that's going on. And I do hope you enjoy this one once we can get Roger Ver's connection a little bit more stable. Let's see. Okay, be right back in 1 second, guys. Thank you so much for the patience. It should be starting up right here in the same place on the same link once we can get the connection stable again. All right, let me make sure that we are again going to be live. Looks like, okay, we're back on. Sorry about that delay, everyone. Hopefully you can see and hear everything just fine right now. And Roger, we were talking about the civil war that took place in Bitcoin, I guess you could say between 2015 and 2017, that ultimately slowed down Bitcoin adoption. Would you like to pick up from there and also explain why you're not maximalist? That's kind of where you were going to take us to the present day.
Yeah, and the goal for me from day one was always to enable individuals to have complete control over their own money and not need permission from any politician or any bank or anybody at all to do whatever they want with their own money. And we were on such an amazing roll with Bitcoin in 2014, 15, 16, like Microsoft, Expedia, Dell, like anyone and everyone was starting to accept Bitcoin.
Steam,
and back
I was
then,
a gamer. I was excited.
Yeah. And back then, all these businesses, their motto wasn't, they weren't cryptocurrency exchanges. They weren't cryptocurrency businesses. They were Bitcoin businesses. I literally have an old Coinbase t-shirt. Right there on the front of the t-shirt says accept Bitcoin. It doesn't say accept crypto. It says accept Bitcoin. And Kraken was known as a Bitcoin exchange, and blockchain.com was known as a Bitcoin wallet. And it wasn't about crypto. It was about Bitcoin. And it had this just giant first mover advantage because it had a good user experience with fast, cheap, reliable payments. And then, we don't need to rehash the entire scaling debate again, but by intentional design, because one group of people wanted Bitcoin transactions to have high fees on chain, and they wanted everybody to use this thing called the Lightning Network that didn't exist at that time. They allowed the blocks to become full on Bitcoin and basically changed Bitcoin from being peer-to-peer cash for the entire world to being a settlement layer for people to use for this, thing they view as a hard asset store of value. And, that's fine if you want to build that project, but I don't think you should hijack the original Bitcoin to do that when very clearly as defined in the white paper, and, Satoshi even wrote the code for how to make the blocks bigger for this to scale to be money for the entire world. And you'll hear a lot of people say, oh, well, just letting the blocks become bigger over time isn't a long-term solution, but it actually is. If you go back and look on the Internet Archive at bitcoin.org from 2011, 12, 13, they literally go over the map as to how Bitcoin can scale to be money for the entire world just by letting the blocks become bigger on chain there. So what happened in the meantime? Well, Ethereum got its chance, and Ripple and Dash, and you had to go right down the the coin market cap list of cryptocurrencies out there. And I guess kind of one of the more frustrating things is, the US dollar is really one of the biggest, most popular cryptocurrencies in terms of trade volume. I think Tether is number one, ahead of Bitcoin recently too. I guess that's better than using Bank of America or Wells Fargo or something like that, but it's not nearly as awesome as it would have been if people were using a non-state issued money altogether. And I kind of feel like the window for, worldwide adoption of a non-state issued money is kind of closing quickly, and maybe hard to get there altogether.
Yeah. So are you less hopeful now that you're absolutely right. I feel like we were catalyzing and moving so quickly back then, and now the regulations are definitely catching up. And I think you had a good point in saying politicians are slow, and that's why we had to move fast and break things. But do you think it's too late to move fast and break things now? Do you think that too many people are looking at blockchain to let it succeed? Especially central bank digital currencies now competing for real, not just a theory, but they're actually happening.
Yeah, right. I heard every single IRS tax form for next year is going to ask every single American, do you own cryptocurrency? And they're really, really aware of this in a big, big way. And so I think in 2013, 14, 15, 16, they thought, oh, these stupid kids on the internet are playing with something, and they weren't worried about it. Whereas now, they realize this is a real something. And I guess the good news is that even with state-issued cryptocurrencies, they're still going to have to compete against the non-state-issued cryptocurrencies. And at the end of the day, whatever cryptocurrency is the most useful to the most number of people around the world is going to be the one that's used by the most number of people around the world. And just because a government is issuing a cryptocurrency doesn't make it the most useful or the easiest one for people to use. So it's great to see that everybody's on a closer to level playing field in that respect at this point. But yeah, am I less optimistic? Yeah, I probably am. A decade's gone by, and we didn't make anywhere near as much progress as we could have made. And if somebody wanted to make, a store value coin, they should have done that. I don't think that they should have hijacked Bitcoin to do that. So now everybody's all excited about Bitcoin, BTC, because the price is $10,000. But if you look at it, it doesn't have them. And I would be embarrassed to promote Bitcoin today, right? I'd have to tell somebody, okay, you can send and receive money with somebody, but it'll cost you, $5 on average to send the transaction, maybe as much as $50. Sometimes the transaction can take up to 2 weeks, or sometimes it doesn't go through at all if it gets dropped from the mempool. And while it's waiting in the mempool there, and you don't know what a mempool is? Let me spend a half an hour explaining that to you as well. And then, what sort of person is going to want to use any of that, right? And then, I left out the part, your transactions can be reversed while it's stuck in the mempool too. And you don't know what a mempool is? Well, too bad. You can spend, months of your life studying all this, and the people are going to say, forget it. I'm going to go back and use Bank of America, or I'm going to use PayPal, or I'm going to use, Visa, or whatever I've been using. And actually, I remember a real big turning point. We had a Bitcoin meetup in Silicon Valley, probably 2015, and like 100 people came. It was at the Korean Spring Barbecue in Santa Clara, California, owned and operated by a longtime friend of mine. And there was no Bitcoin Cash yet, but he was accepting Bitcoin for payments. And Luke Jr., Brian Bishop, and I think it was Eric Lombroso, three big, Bitcoin Core small block types. They literally spent the entire evening at the meetup telling people not to pay for their meal in Bitcoin. And they spent the entire evening arguing with people, telling people that you shouldn't use Bitcoin to pay for things. You should use credit cards instead. And for myself and everybody else that was there, we were excited about this being usable for payments. And for myself specifically, it was when I heard about the Silk Road. I wasn't interested in buying the drugs myself, but I thought, what the heck kind of money are they using for this? This must be amazing. But imagine if from day one, Bitcoin had, slow, expensive, unreliable transactions where, cost you $5 a transaction and you don't know when it's going to go through. The Silk Road could have never even happened either, right? And if it wasn't for the Silk Road, this entire Bitcoin ecosystem that we have today never would have gotten started. So I think it was a real big mistake. But that's the past. We can't change it. What's going to happen next? I think you want to invest your money where the capital is going to flow in the future, not where it already is. And where it already is at the moment is in Bitcoin, but with its horrible user experience, I don't think that's where it's going to be in the long term. So yeah. And have a diverse portfolio. Don't be a maximalist on any coin.
Yeah, that's a good point. That you brought up something interesting there, which is, one of the big reasons I was excited for people and merchants to accept Bitcoin instead of just hodling it and all of that and taking that perspective early on while we're going down this road. At this point, I've accepted that Bitcoin is trying to go the road of store of value. Maybe, even though it does seem like a far cry, maybe more so now, Federal Reserve coin or the reserve currency of the world. I'm not necessarily seeing that as much, but at least we got free marketing. When people are accepting Bitcoin, suddenly they have some Bitcoin. So it gives them a reason to keep track of it and follow developments and maybe, just hold it for a while and eventually understand how it works. Whereas if you're just a hodler, if you're just someone who takes it and holds it and assumes it's going to have value for some extraneous reason, which might not be payments, might be the Lightning Network, but Lightning Network, I think more and more people are beginning to realize isn't the end all be all. It's not being adopted as much. There's more Bitcoin living on Ethereum right now, DeFi, by I think 10 times at this point.
No, almost 100 times, I think, at this 100 point.
Yeah, it just keeps going that direction. So that's the trend. So one could say the Lightning Network just isn't working. It's always 4 years out or 2 years out, whatever it is, 6 months out, whatever.
18 months, I think, is what it's been for the last 8 years or so.
Yeah. So, I think it does slow it down when people aren't accepting it personally. So that's been kind of a disappointment I've had to accept. But you're right, we can't live in the past. We have to live in the present, and there are opportunities out there. And you're still a big advocate for Bitcoin Cash to take us into that. So, Bitcoin Cash split out of Bitcoin because they wanted to, the community wanted to keep this idea of keeping Bitcoin true to what we saw in the white paper, that it's digital peer or electronic peer-to-peer cash. And you've been seen as the creator and founder of it, which I think you can clarify at least a little bit there. Are you the founder of Bitcoin Cash? How did Bitcoin Cash get created?
Yeah, so I had absolutely nothing to do with the creation of Bitcoin Cash. Yet everybody, introduces me today as the creator of Bitcoin Cash. But a long time ago, people would introduce me similarly in regards to Bitcoin, like, hey, this is your Bitcoin guy. And it's because I saw something that was useful for the world, and I went out there and marketed it as best I could and told as many people about it as best I could. And I did the same thing with Bitcoin Cash after I saw that the use case of Bitcoin being used for payments got destroyed. And if you want to use it for store value, okay, that's fine, but that's not what got me excited about Bitcoin to begin with. And but that is what had me excited about Bitcoin Cash, is that it still works. And so my understanding, and Omri would have to jump in and correct me if I get anything wrong. And if I do get something wrong, it's not intentional, but it's because there were lots of things happening, lots of people there. But my understanding of what went on is that there was this scaling debate within Bitcoin, and then there was this thing called the SegWit 2x agreement, which was to increase the block size from 1 megabyte to 2 megabytes and do this thing called SegWit. And if you're not a longtime crypto nerd, this is all ancient history and not that exciting to you. But my understanding of how Bitcoin Cash was born is that Jihan and Bitmain put together a contingency plan in case the 2x part of SegWit 2x didn't happen. That was increasing the block size to 2 megabytes. And my understanding is that Jihan paid Omri directly to create Bitcoin Cash. And I don't know if it even had the name of that right away, but they paid him and a couple of others directly to basically split Bitcoin at the time that SegWit got activated, so that they would have a backup version of Bitcoin that didn't have this complicated mess of SegWit in there that makes it more difficult to do things in the future on Bitcoin, and that they could switch to and use that if the 2x part of the SegWit 2x agreement didn't happen. And so that's my understanding of the origin of Bitcoin Cash. And I believe then Jihan, continued to pay Omri and maybe a couple of others for, the next year or two or 2.5 years, maybe even there. And then maybe about a year ago, I think Bitmain and Jihan stopped paying Omri for that. And that's when we saw some of this, IFP talk come into the world, which is going to be, I'm sure, one of the main topics people want to hear about here. And so Absolutely. It wasn't until Jihan stopped paying Omri that suddenly now there was a lot of IFP action happening within Bitcoin Cash.
I didn't understand that part of it. Yeah. So this IFP again is just a kind of tax that goes towards development of Bitcoin. I think in the beginning of the year, it was a huge one. It was structured a little bit differently, and it eventually kind of fizzled away. It looks like Bitcoin ABC, which is headed up by Amari, eventually decided to retract it, but they came back recently and announced that basically it was going to happen with their client, whether people like it or not. They need some sort of funding, and I didn't know it was maybe because they were being funded by Jihan. But here we are now, and we're leading into November, where Bitcoin Cash could eventually fragment the community. And as I mentioned with Amori, it's kind of what Trace Mayer told me a while back that he wanted to see happen to forks like Bitcoin Cash, which is he wanted to divide and conquer. That's how Bitcoin is going to win. And that's, in my opinion, all these forks do kind of fracture the community. community and further divide us, like what we've seen when Bitcoin forked away, or Bitcoin Cash forked away from Bitcoin. So leading into this, what do you think is going to be the outcome of this leading into November? Do you expect that Bitcoin ABC is going to win out with their funding plan, or do you think that BCHN, which is the other client software, I think that's most popular right now, is eventually going to take the helm of Bitcoin Cash?
Yeah, I think BCHN already has the helm of Bitcoin Cash. So there's two exchanges that are allowing people to trade futures on the potential split here. So we have a coinex.com and coinflex.com. And the ABC version is trading for about 10% of the price of the BCHN, the Bitcoin Cash node version. And so if you look at it here, like if Omri cares about peer-to-peer electronic cash for the world, he wouldn't go out of his way to create a split here. Because Trace Mayer is right. If you split too many times and your community fragments over and over and over, that's bad for that coin. Although, to be fair, Bitcoin, that community has fragmented too. Where do you think all these Ethereum people came from? Vitalik was writing for Bitcoin Magazine, and he saw the scaling argument happening within Bitcoin, and then he went and created Ethereum itself. So don't think that Bitcoin hasn't split. I mean, Bitcoin Cash is an example of that too, right? So all of these other coins out there are fragments of the original Bitcoin community there. But if Omri cares about peer-to-peer cash for the world, he wouldn't go and do this. But clearly, it seems to be he just cares about using this as his own piggy bank to earn a bunch of money now that Jihan stopped paying him. And Omri may be a really good software developer, but and I'm not here to bash on an Omri all day, but there's going to be a little bit of bashing here. He's a horrible, horrible, horrible community builder. And if you want to have a successful cryptocurrency, you not only do you have to have good software developers, but you have to have good community and business developers. And Omri does not have the people skills that are required for that. He will run circles around me when it comes to coding up the software code for full nodes. But I run circles around him when it comes to building communities of people that are excited about different things. And it takes both types, right? You can't just have one without the other. You need both. But Omri has really driven quite a few passionate Bitcoin Cash users away from Bitcoin Cash onto other projects. And that's really disappointing to have seen that happen. And another guy I'm a really big fan of, his thinking mainly probably because we read a whole bunch of the same books when we were young men. But Derek McGill pointed out, and Omri was trying to claim that none of these businesses are willing to give Omri any money or ABC any money. And I sent Omri a private Telegram message probably more than a year ago now because he was complaining about me and Bitcoin.com in public, and I told him, hey, I'm never going to give you another cent because you're out there stirring up trouble for no reason, right? If you don't like something we're doing, send me a private message. You don't need to be out there on Twitter and Telegram groups stirring up trouble because that's how you sow dissent within a community. And it's not fun being part of a community that has a bunch of infighting. So if there is some infighting, try and keep it private. Have a private conversation with those people. But anyhow, I messaged him and I told him, Omri, I'm really sick of your bad attitude. I said, you really have a bad attitude and you need to stop or something along those lines. And his reply to me was, do I? With a question mark. This is a text message. And then I replied to him. I said, yes, you really do. I don't know if your reply was genuine or sarcastic, because it's hard to tell with him. And he didn't even reply at all. So clearly it was just a sarcastic, I don't give an F reply. Yeah. And that's not the type of attitude that you need to have if you were trying to build a community there. And it's been real disappointing. So, but anyhow, back to Derek McGill and his point. Omri was complaining that this is a market failure. No businesses are willing to give ABC any money. It's not a market failure. It's market feedback, right? So all these businesses aren't willing to give Omri any money because they don't value what he's doing more than what they value the other things they could spend the money on. So for example, at Bitcoin.com, we've built a pretty successful business that has a substantial amount of cash flow each month. And then we spend that to pay developers to build more tools. Like we have mint.bitcoin.com where anybody can build their own SLP token on top of Bitcoin Cash in like 30 seconds. That's really useful.
That's like an Ethereum token, right? For the
it's like an Ethereum token, but faster, cheaper, and more reliable at this point than Ethereum. I'm a huge Ethereum fan. I own a bunch of Ethereum and a bunch of different Ethereum tokens, but the Ethereum network is buckling under its own success at the moment.
There's actually something funny. There's something funny happening in the BTC subreddit today because people are talking about MakerDAO. MakerDAO is putting forth a proposal. I'm sure you saw this today, a proposal to add RenBCH over to MakerDAO as one of the collateralizing tokens. So RenBCH is basically wrapped Bitcoin Cash and putting that on Ethereum. And there was an interesting post there where somebody said, shouldn't it be the reverse? Why would you go to a network that has higher fees and is slower? Well, that seems kind of backwards. But I imagine it's because of DeFi integration and being able to do things like that. But
right,
yeah,
and there's just so much happening on Ethereum. But Bitcoin Cash, can already do several times more transactions each day than Ethereum. But all the actions on Ethereum at the moment. So who's going to win? Who's going to have market share? I don't know. That's why you should own some Bitcoin Cash. You should own some Ethereum, and you should own a little bit of everything out there. Don't be a maximalist. And I still own some BTC as well because people out there in the world they think Bitcoin, they think BTC is Bitcoin, and they don't realize that it's not the same coin that made it popular to begin with, but it has this huge amount of mind share out there. So but to circle back, it's market feedback that people don't want to give ABC money. And we should point out there's this other awesome tool on Bitcoin Cash called Flipstarter. If people haven't seen Flipstarter, I would love to see it forked to be usable on other coins. But basically, it's a way to do crowdfunding on top of Bitcoin Cash, but the funds don't get sent to the person that's requesting them until the goal is met. So there were a number of different Flipstarter fundraising campaigns for Bitcoin Cash Node and like the SLP guys and a bunch of other ones. And ABC was up to one point, they were the only one that didn't get their goal met, and they didn't get their funds met. Every single other person that did a fundraising campaign using Flipstarter got all their funds met.
When was that? Or around when?
Within the last couple months, within the last 3 months, maybe 4 months or so. Yeah. And Flipstarter is really cool. I would love to see this on other chains because that's the problem with these other, fundraising campaigns. You send your $20 and they get it no matter what most of the time. Whereas this, you make some sort of little transaction on chain, and then it's just one giant transaction. It'll be one giant batch where the person, if they try to raise, 100 Bitcoin Cash, they get it's all or nothing. And it's a really great way, not just to fund cryptocurrency projects, but imagine in the future, there's a road in your neighborhood, you wanted to get it repaved, but you don't want to pay for it yourself. Imagine if you have everybody chip in, but nobody has to pay a single penny until you have the total amount due to repave the road. So I think this is a fantastic way to fund, public works projects. And the fact that people didn't want to fund ABC that way, but they funded BCHD, they funded BCHN, they funded a whole bunch of other full node implementations this way, shows that the ABC wasn't providing the market what the market is willing to pay for. And so that's market feedback, not market failure. And that credit to Derek McGill for having that, pointing that out online.
Yeah, it seems like they shot themselves in the foot with the first talks about the IFP, and definitely the reputation took a hit. And I think even recently it's taken more of a hit. So, I mean, that's the trend, right? You got to follow the trend. And I think you made a good point with market feedback. The market obviously isn't valuing some sort of tax. And at this point, I have to wonder if they're really going to be a pivotal player at all in Bitcoin Cash, at least BCH in the future. For example, when I talked to Amori, I don't know if you saw the interview, Roger.
I did. I watched the whole thing this morning. Yeah.
Yeah, he said he didn't get he's not planning on taking the ticker symbol or anything like that, which is pretty nice. So I can't actually see this fragmenting as much as maybe the feud between BCH and BTC. But yeah,
so I didn't interpret his interview as him saying that he's not planning to. All his actions have been that he wants the Bitcoin Cash brand and Bitcoin Cash ticker for his new coin that has the IFP that was nowhere on the ABC roadmap. I mean, people liked the ABC roadmap that he put out. And it had been out there. This IFP was nowhere on it, so it's kind of like a switcheroo here. He said, hey, here's the roadmap, and then people start down the road. And he says, oh, by the way, we're going to make this major change to the roadmap. So I hope I misheard, and that maybe he can clarify himself. If Bitcoin ABC says they're forking away and they don't want the Bitcoin Cash name and Bitcoin Cash ticker, wow, more power to them. Fantastic. There's one more experiment for the world to try. And I would be very supportive of that. But if they're trying to hijack the Bitcoin Cash project and ticker for this new coin that wasn't on their roadmap, was never a part of Bitcoin, any flavor of Bitcoin ever, I can't support that. So maybe that's an opportunity for Amrit to extend an olive branch.
Yeah, to clarify that point, he said that if there was a situation where they didn't have enough support from the community and there was a fork and they were the minority, that he wouldn't have an interest in fighting BCH for that or trying to create further feud down the line. He would just try to continue to develop his client. If another coin forked out of that, then yeah, he'd support that as long as he has funding. So it looks like whatever happens in November is going to happen regardless. Even if he loses, it looks like he's willing to go to be fine with that. That's my interpretation of what he said when I asked him that question, since someone was interested about that, which is nice to me. I think that's actually a pretty good thing. But yeah, so I mean, right now it's looking like Bitcoin ABC. Do you have any concerns leading into November? Maybe something you want to bring up with the audience? Is there anything that could change what looks like to be the trajectory of November, where Bitcoin ABC is the minority and BCHN eventually is the lead client, as you could say, that people use?
ABC already is the minority. It has about 10% of the price on the futures markets, and somewhere in the ballpark of 65-70% of the blocks are signaling for BCHN, 0% are signaling for ABC, and the other 35% or so just plain aren't signaling. So ABC already is the small minority here. So if Omri didn't want to hurt Bitcoin Cash, he would say, okay, ABC is going to fork off into our own Bitcoin Cash ABC coin, or whatever the name is going to be, Bitcoin IFP, and just let it go. And then they can implement replay protection, and then it's not a headache for anybody. Whereas right now, I wouldn't be surprised if exchanges and merchant processors and everybody else are thinking, oh, I guess we're going to have to suspend Bitcoin Cash payments on our platforms here because there might be a contentious hard fork within Bitcoin Cash. That's disastrous. But it seems clear that at this point, Omri just sees this as a stable paycheck from this fork coin that gives him directly 8% of the block reward. Can you imagine how furious the Bitcoin community would be if all of a sudden Adam Back came out and said, Blockstream, we raised $120 million from a bunch of VC firms and banks, but we've gone through all that money with our development now. So we need to have more money to continue building, infrastructure for Bitcoin. So we're going to give 8% of every single block on Bitcoin to Blockstream to continue building infrastructure for Bitcoin and Lightning and whatever else he feels like, because he's the dictator. People would be rioting and, almost maybe physically rioting in the streets. People would be so mad about that. And so it's the exact same situation here. Omri said, oh, by the way, I'm just going to take 8% of the block reward for myself. Like, people would be absolutely rioting the street, or should be, if in the same way that they would be if Adam Back tried to do the same thing. And then the other side of it too is, if you look at this, and one part of the IFP that I do think is clever is that from Bitcoin Cash's perspective, is that all the miners across all the SHA-56 chains pay for it, right? So that's interesting. But then even if that is the case, who decides who gets the 8%, right? So I think a really, really, really strong argument can be that Coinbase or BitPay have done, far, far, far more than ABC to spread, Bitcoin Cash adoption around the world. Imagine if Bitcoin Cash was not accepted at BitPay or was not on Coinbase. It wouldn't have anywhere near as much traction. And not to toot my own horn too much, but of course, Bitcoin.com has played a big, big role in spreading Bitcoin Cash adoption as well, with our fantastic wallet and our services over there using Bitcoin Cash. In Omri's plan, Omri gets 100% of the IFP funds. Coinbase gets 0, BitPay gets 0, Bitcoin.com gets 0, Cash Fusion gets 0, Electron Cash gets 0. All these other things get 0. And yet all these other companies, BitPay earns money, Coinbase earns money, Bitcoin.com earns money. So it's not a market failure that ABC doesn't have any money. It's an example of them not being entrepreneurial enough and figuring out how to, earn money from actually having a product that people are willing to pay for. And that's disappointing that they're willing to really cause a giant fight within Bitcoin Cash again over this. It's really, really disappointing. So if Omri genuinely cares about peer-to-peer cash for the world, he should implement replay protection and do his IFP, but don't try and split the Bitcoin Cash chain to do so. And potentially, and imagine what a disaster it would be if BitPay dropped Bitcoin Cash, or if Coinbase dropped Bitcoin Cash. That would be an absolute disaster for Bitcoin Cash. And those are real possibilities with the amount of infighting that Omri is causing by veering completely off the Bitcoin roadmap that there's ever been on BTC, BCH, or BSV for that matter. There's never, ever, ever been an IFP. So if he wants to start one, he should start it from scratch. He shouldn't hijack an existing project because I'll be upset, and everybody will be upset with that, the same way all the old-time Bitcoiners feel upset that Bitcoin itself was hijacked into becoming a settlement layer rather than peer-to-peer cash for the world. I don't want to see Bitcoin Cash get hijacked into becoming a personal paycheck protection program for Omri, which is what the IFP looks like to me, and I think to any objective player that's looking at it.
So is one of the biggest issues that you see there the fact that they haven't implemented replay attack protection? Because I think from my understanding, if you don't implement it, then you're basically saying it has to go this way with this client, and there's no recourse at all. We're going to go down this road, and we're going to assume we're going to be the majority winner, or to create all sorts of issues later down the line. Do you want to explain replay attack protection and why you think that might be important, even if it is a minority chain? Could that pose a problem?
Yeah, we should back up one step there too. And if you watch other videos of Amr, he loves to talk about game theory. And if you're playing a game of chicken and you're both in a car, the best way to make sure you're going to win the game of chicken is to unhook your steering wheel from the car and toss it out the window, and make sure the other person that's coming towards you saw you throw your steering wheel out the window, because they think, oh my God, this guy can't divert course even if he wanted to. And that's exactly what Omri's doing here. With the IFP plan. He's saying, we're going to do it. We're going to do it no matter what. And he's threatening and saber rattling about how there's not going to be replay protection. And the way he's trying to phrase it is that if ABC at any point in the future winds up having more hash rate than Bitcoin Cash, it can split the network, and a bunch of the BCHN nodes could reorg to follow the ABC chain. And so that's exactly him and his example of, taking the steering wheel off the car and throwing it out the window and letting everybody watch that he's doing that. So, if he didn't want to be disruptive to Bitcoin Cash, he would say, okay, we're going to implement replay protection. And to explain what that is, that would be at the time that the split happens between Bitcoin Cash and the ABC coin, transactions on one chain won't be automatically valid on the other chain. They'll have something different about it so that they don't get broadcast on both chains. And then you now have two completely new coins, and you don't have to worry about the miners for one wiping out the chain of the other and having people lose money and have there be confusion and all sorts of things, which would be a big disaster if that were to be the case, and is a giant headache for everybody involved. And so if Omri cares about Bitcoin Cash and peer-to-peer cash for the world, more power to him if he wants to fork off ABC and have his own, IFP coin. But he needs to implement replay protection. He has about right around 10% of the price on the futures markets, and 0% of the hash rate is signaling for his coin. So don't continue to cause trouble. It's not too late, Omri. We still have a month and a half. Reattach your steering wheel to the ABC car, and stop playing the game of chicken. Just go down your own peaceful path, down your own road there without causing trouble for everybody else. That's what I would like to see happen.
Assuming that he doesn't want to do replay protection or doesn't do that, is there a way that BCHN could do that and still keep the BCH ticker symbol and community?
Maybe. It's more work. The person that implements replay protection loses all the existing infrastructure. All the existing infrastructure like Mint and like the Bitcoin.com wallet and like everything else would have to also take an active change as well. So, and
yeah,
maybe, but it's nicer if the minority chain with about 10% of the price on the futures markets and 0% of the hash rate, if they do it, problem solved. And it would seem strange to make the vast majority have to be the one to make these major changes. So,
but from my understanding, that would be like conceding defeat almost right away. And Omri sees this, as he said in the interview, again, just from my understanding, that this is his final play. This is his move, and like yourself, where you've dedicated your mission to focusing on adoption for Bitcoin Cash, or at least payments, so people can use cryptocurrency for payments and have sound money based on the economics you understood. His short-term goal is that he's decided they need to get this funding. This is the way they're going to do it. He tried to rely on other things like donations or I guess sponsorships, whatever you want to call it, and it didn't work out. So this is his final play. So I really can't see replay attack protection coming from him, because it seems like that would be conceding a defeat at this point. So could it get ugly here going into November without replay attack protection? Again, like if it does, neither side does that, and they have only 10% of the hash power or something like that, could this cause problems for people who are hodlers of Bitcoin Cash or just users of Bitcoin Cash, or maybe even shut down exchanges for a while?
It already caused uncertainty, right? And so markets don't like uncertainty, and so it's already been a disaster. And so like even in my own life, I've been selling lots of different cryptocurrency options, and you can earn money from the options, and then you can buy other options. And so what I had been doing for a long time is I had been buying lots and lots of Bitcoin Cash puts, which is basically just a fancy way of saying that I'm agreeing to buy Bitcoin Cash at some specific price lower than the price today in the future. And so if like a Bitcoin Cash is like, let's say $220 today, I'm agreeing, to buy Bitcoin Cash several months in the future at $200 each. And in exchange for me agreeing to that, they pay me money right now for that. And then I've been earning a substantial amount of money this way. And I had been taking all of that and just using it to buy more Bitcoin Cash and sell more Bitcoin Cash puts in the future. And I was buying, millions of dollars of Bitcoin Cash this way. And I stopped doing that a few months ago because of the uncertainty that Omri has caused in the market. And I switched to buying a whole bunch of Ethereum that way. And from an investor standpoint, it's done fantastic. But from someone who is excited about peer-to-peer cash for the world, I think Bitcoin Cash has a better shot at doing that than any other cryptocurrency out there. But Omri's busy, rocking the boat. And if the boat capsizes, that's the end of it. So here I am. Everybody knows I'm a big Bitcoin Cash fan. I run Bitcoin.com, and I, have plenty of money to do things with too. I had been using that money to buy more Bitcoin Cash with the interest that I was earning on it every month. I switched to Ethereum a few months ago, directly because of Omri, and I'm sure I'm not the only one. So it's an absolute disaster what Omri's been doing, and it shows that he cares more about his paycheck protection IFP plan than he does about peer-to-peer cash for the world or Bitcoin Cash. And we saw with Bitcoin Cash Note, I think it was 1,000 Bitcoin Cash that they raised in the course of like less than a week when they did their flip starter. Boom, they had no problem getting it all. The only flip starters, I can only think of two so far that didn't meet their goal. And both, one was ABC and the other was a guy that is a big supporter of the IFP as well, and ABC. So I think that's a good example of the Bitcoin Cash community doesn't appreciate the IFP. And so if it's contentious, that's, I think, a reason not to do it. So, and that's where we're at today.
Do you think that in the event that Maury and Bitcoin ABC really did care about Bitcoin Cash, they didn't just abandon Bitcoin Cash, and if anything, they grew up and scaled their business even more? To be devil's advocate here, and do you think that development would be faster if we did have some sort of centralized source like that? Because I've understood that the corporate system, the way that it works, top-down structure, has, like you've said, market feedback, just been one of the most successful ways of organizing groups to get some sort of results in a timely manner. For example, Ethereum is having all sorts of issues, just trying to get clients to communicate, and even so, they have to centralize on certain individuals who coordinate for these teams to release the test nets and to get everyone on the same page, because decentralized development is, you could say, a very difficult thing to pull off. Do you think that from your perspective, do you think it could be more effective having some sort of fund that would fuel development like that, whether it was Bitcoin ABC or something else, or just continuing to let Bitcoin Cash, I guess you could call it anarchistically come to the best result down 2 years? Which one do you think would be faster, I would say, for development and adoption of Bitcoin Cash? Because we have tried Bitcoin ABC's route, you could say, over the last few years, and they're number 5 or 6 on CoinMarketCap right now. Bitcoin Cash has dropped somewhat. Do you think that's the result of having them at the front? Or do you think it'll be faster, slower with them out of the picture? I don't know. Any thoughts around that?
Yeah, I think we already have the information on there. And here I am, people like me, I stopped buying Bitcoin Cash because of the disruption that Omri is causing. So, and Omri seems real negative, like on the Bitcoin Cash ecosystem. I think he should only be negative on ABC because he didn't find a way to monetize it, and the businesses around it don't support, we're not willing to give him money for whatever various reasons. But if you look at the Bitcoin Cash ecosystem, it's amazing, right? More than 10,000 SLP tokens have been made on top of Bitcoin Cash. Tether is on top of Bitcoin Cash. You can use it in the 13 million Bitcoin.com wallets. You can send and receive your USDT on top of Bitcoin Cash for about a 20th of a penny per transaction. I love Ethereum, but I don't love paying $6 a transaction to move Tether around. And so there you have it. And there's this amazing, vibrant community of all sorts of things happening within Bitcoin Cash that people are now saying, oh, well, maybe I'll build on some other chain because there's this uncertainty in the future being caused by Omri and ABC. So, and if you look at it, Bitcoin Cash in overall market cap, I think it's number 5 on CoinMarketCap here, but it's actually number 3 in terms of proof of work coins, right? So you have Bitcoin, Ethereum, Bitcoin Cash is number 3, right? So you had like Ripple had 100% pre-mined to begin with, and we can see what has Ripple done, right? They have this giant war chest of billions of dollars that the Ripple Foundation has. they haven't done nearly as much as Bitcoin Cash has, right? Bitcoin Cash is accepted at more than 100,000 places all over the world. Maybe that'll change. Maybe XRP will surpass Bitcoin Cash in the future in terms of people using it all over the world for things. But so far, Bitcoin Cash has done an amazing job at that. We can look at Dash. Dash had an IFP right out of the gate, millions of dollars a month, right? A huge amount of money. Omri is talking about around $7 million a year at the current price. Dash had that much per month, I think, lots of months. And they got a whole lot less done. And there was a whole lot of fighting and squabbling there. So I think Omri just sees this as a way for him to guarantee himself a paycheck at this point, rather than an actual way to move the world forward. If he's really a big fan of IPs, please go sell his Bitcoin Cash for Dash or something else. And I noticed when I was listening to your interview, I don't know exactly what year Omri got involved in Bitcoin, but in your interview, he said that it was around 2012. And he said, I knew this was going to be big. I knew this was going to be a big deal. Well, if he really did, and then he quoted Taleb, right? So he says, show me what you do, not what you say, or something along those lines, right? Well, if Omri really knew Bitcoin was going to be really, really big in 2012, if he had bought just $200 worth of Bitcoin and held it, he'd be a millionaire today, right? So his actions tell me, and the fact that he's so desperate for money tells me that he didn't even believe in Bitcoin enough in 2012 to buy even $200 worth and hold on to it. Look at his actions, not his words. And so there you go. So whereas people like me, I was buying up as much as I could the whole way through. And, for the last couple of years, I've been buying and accumulating as much Bitcoin Cash as I can there. And
it's interesting, Roger, that you don't take any sort of maximalist stance, whether it's for Bitcoin Cash or BTC, but you continue to kind of understand what's going on across the entire industry and the general trends of things. How do you do that? How do you kind of approach that personally? What's your, and this is completely aside, but what do you do when you wake up in the morning? How do you research crypto? How do you stay on top of things?
Yeah, so I'll tell you a secret. So like now that I'm fairly well known within the cryptocurrency sphere, everybody thinks I know everything about everything and I'm responsible for every last thing. And the truth is, as much as I would like to know everything about everything, there's just not enough hours in the day. And I try to follow some of the DeFi stuff that's going on and some of the stuff that's going on in these other chains, but it's impossible. So what do I do each day? I go up and I try and read the different cryptocurrency groups on Reddit and see what are the top posts there and what's happening there. But for the most part, I've been, not worrying so much about what others are doing and then just trying to build the most useful tools that I possibly can. Like if people haven't tried mint.bitcoin.com, go and check it out. It is so easy to make your own token with your own icon. You can put your own, Omar coin with your face right there on the icon, and then you can send it around to anybody in the world in the bitcoin.com wallet there. And then you can make dividend payments to everybody that has an Omar token or your crypto token with a 0 at the end there. This is incredibly useful stuff. And maybe other chains have built stuff like that, but I'm not aware of that. And so,
what are some of the more interesting SLP tokens that exist, or tokens that have been minted that you see out there?
The big use case, I think, is Tether, right? And then maybe they can start wrapping that and plugging it into some of these other DeFi stuff. And then you'll have Tether that has a 20th of a cent fee rather than a $6 fee for every transaction there. And then anyhedge.com or another guys that are basically building all this DeFi stuff on top of Bitcoin Cash because it has so much more scalability. So you can check out anyhedge.com, and they have an Oracle, so you can get the external data feeds right there into the Bitcoin Cash smart contracts. So there's a lot of fun stuff that's going on there as well. But like I said, I've never ever been a maximalist. If something way better than Bitcoin Cash comes along, man, I'll be waving the banner for that one as well. And I'm a fan of all the other competitors. Like the Monero community, I feel like they're really, really quiet, and it's been disappointing to see, I guess I should call him out for this, like Fluffy Pony. Like I've met him in person. I've had dinner with him. He was nice to me in person, but man, put that guy behind a Twitter handle and he is a vicious jerk on Twitter. And so recently, I know firsthand because I was involved in the transaction. Tim Draper owns a lot of Bitcoin Cash. And I set him up with a Bitcoin.com wallet. I made him his own token. I explained it all. And then he tweeted recently a positive thing about Bitcoin Cash. And then, Fluffy Pony literally tweets on Twitter and he'll back out. So it wasn't a lie. It was sarcasm. But like most people that read it wouldn't know. He said on Twitter that he had contacted Tim Draper's office, and they confirmed that his account had been hacked, and that's why it posted something positive about Bitcoin Cash. That's not how an adult behaves. That's what something like a second grader would do.
So that was bogus? That was like a lie?
This account wasn't hacked. No, that was his own tweet, and he did it. And he's a big, he owns a bunch of Bitcoin Cash. So it sounds like maybe you were one of the ones that were fooled by his tweet when he said that.
No, I didn't see that. I didn't see that at all.
Yeah, he put out a tweet saying that he had contacted Tim's office, and they confirmed his account had been hacked. And like, that's not appropriate. That's not the way that adults should behave.
Yeah.
But I'm a giant Monero fan. Monero is an awesome cryptocurrency, but they have some of these toxic jerks that are, in charge of the PR stuff. So like, I've never really done anything to promote Monero at all, despite, I'm sure I'm one of the bigger Monero holders out there, but that's one of the nice things about Monero. Nobody knows how much you have or where it is or how much you've sent or what you're doing with it.
What's it like? What's it like being a whale when you're reading the posts on Reddit, right? So I'm sure that's something that might have been attributed to you many times. Do you feel like they do have a lot of influence? Like who are the whales? Do you think it's more likely the old Bitcoin OGs, or do you think it's institutions that have entered recently? Who do you think, I guess you could say, manipulates the market the most, or is it both like equal? Or
and I'm far from any sort of expert trader, but my guess is that there aren't all that many whales, and most of these things that people think are whales are maybe just a whole bunch of minnows swimming together at the same time, and people see the FOMO, and so they all pile in or all pile out of one coin at a similar time because they see that's which way the herd of all the other minnows are going. But the people that aren't part of that herd, they think, oh, it must be one big giant whale doing this. And that's my guess of what's going on the majority of the time. It's just, a big giant ebbs and flows of the market as a whole.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Yeah. I've thought kind of the same along the way, but of course it depends on the market cap, the number of hodlers for a specific coin. I'm going to go ahead and get into the questions here, Roger. I have one myself before I get into the audience questions here, which is, so people are talking about now, so with the debates that went on, the price for Bitcoin and Ethereum back when we had the last election. So looks like the price for Bitcoin was $617 and the price for Ethereum was $11. And just regardless of price, where do you see us in the next 4 years, or maybe including price with crypto?
Yeah, I think probably the best thing to guess would be on the overall market cap of the entire ecosystem rather than with specific coins. And at the moment, like the total market cap for the entire ecosystem is around 330 billion US dollars. But there's two things that are moving, right? The overall amount of people that are holding crypto, and then they're printing more US dollars all the time too. So the dollar becomes worth less. And so what will we be in 4 years from now? And it sure moved a whole lot in the last 4 years. And another thinker I'm a big fan, though, of is Ray Kurzweil. And he says that in the short term, things always move slower than we expect them to, but in the long term, they always move, much faster and much more than we expect them to. And I think that's kind of going to be the same with cryptocurrency. In the next 6 months, maybe the change won't be that big. In the next 4 years, it'll be quite a bit bigger. And in the next decade, the whole world's going to change in a big, big way.
Yeah. Certainly, that's a good response. I have Yves Nocalier here who says, that's awesome. Okay, so he's looking forward to the interview. Then he says, please ask him about the whole ABC fork situation that might happen. It's so confusing. Please explain like a 4-year-old can understand. What is your strategy, Roger, with your BCH bag in case of a fork? I don't know if you've done much thinking in case that does happen.
I haven't, because I hope... My hopes and thoughts are that Bitcoin Cash is going to continue on the path of being a peer-to-peer electronic cash system for the entire world to use as cash. And in fact, maybe when we're done with the questions, I already have it loaded up here. And for everyone that's watching on the live stream, get your Bitcoin.com wallet ready, or any wallet that can scan a private key. And I'll give away some Bitcoin Cash right through the video chat by displaying some private keys. So I have that queued up.
Awesome. Get ready. So to get ready, they download Bitcoin.com wallet, download it now, and then later on after the questions, you get a chance at the private keys. Get the Bitcoin.com wallet, guys.
Yes, I made 20 times $5, so $100 total worth of Bitcoin Cash, but $5 to 20 different people. So
awesome, cool. Okay, next question. Other than economics in one lesson, great. What is your second favorite reading recommendation? I guess some sort of field, or maybe I guess even a book.
Yeah, and Economics in One Lesson was great. It's also an older book at this point, but it's amazing how much that'll change your life because you'll see the whole world much more clearly. Another book that is older now, but I still think fantastic, and I reread it again a couple of years ago, is The Age of Spiritual Machines by Ray Kurzweil. I think that came out in like 1999 or 2000. It's been a long time. About the future from reading The Age of Spiritual Machines by Ray Kurzweil. Anything by Ray Kurzweil is awesome.
I read it. I read the sequel to that one actually, so it had elements of that one. Near. Yes, exactly. I have that book.
Which is another great one.
Yeah,
but I kind of like The Age of Spiritual Machines because it's so old now, but you can see, wow, what this guy said was right. So he was talking like, now we have Siri, and you can talk to your phone and say whatever you want, and the phone understands pretty well. He was talking about how that was coming way before, like back when that sounded like crazy talk. And now here it is.
Have you ever gotten a chance to meet him by any chance?
So I never met Ray Kurzweil, but a fun related story to that. I've gotten to meet lots of these venture capital firms in the crypto space. And around like 2013 and 14, a lot of them in Silicon Valley started reaching out to me and wanting to meet me and learn more about this space. And one of the guys I met was a guy named Ethan Kurzweil. And, we talked for an hour or so and had a real nice conversation. At the end of the conversation, and I didn't know who he was, but I asked him, I said, by the way, like, are you related in any way to Ray Kurzweil? And he goes, yeah, that's my dad. And I said, you must have had one of the most interesting childhoods like ever. And I told him I was a big fan of his dad, and Ethan was a very nice guy as well. So
yeah, I'm sure his dad is so busy at Google, and I don't know if he still teaches at NYU. By the way, guys, definitely keep a lookout for Ray Kurzweil's next book. It was supposed to be due by the end of the year, but I don't think we've gotten any updates. But I'm very fascinated to see. It might even have cryptocurrency and payments in there, which would be really exciting. Maybe you should reach out. Maybe you can get a chapter in there. Some thoughts.
Maybe I can get an early copy to read, because he is such a visionary and an amazing guy.
Absolutely. Next question from Crypto0. I'd be interested on Roger's thoughts on proof of work and whether you think it's sustainable. I think this is a good question. My take here is that it is a China-run arbitrage business where no one actually cares about network security, hash rate, but profit only, while simultaneously harming the environment. And thoughts on proof of stake.
Yeah, so the part about it in China, it just being an arbitrage opportunity and a way for them to get capital out of the country. I think there's a lot of truth to that. Not for everybody, but there's definitely a lot of truth for that in China. As far as it harming the environment, today, somewhat, because some of the power is still coming from, oil and coal and that sort of thing. But if you look at, solar power is just getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper, and we're not very far away from it being, cheaper than fossil fuel power. And the moment it's cheaper, then, all the power is going to start coming from that. So I'm not that worried about proof of work in the long-term damaging the environment, as soon as these renewable energy sources are cheaper than the polluting energy sources. And we're getting pretty close to that. And
do you think it's only that, though? Because I've been reading a lot about how, for example, solar panels only live 10 years. So you'd have to get some sort of return on investment on that, and then you'd have to buy them again. And the production of them just creates a lot of pollution as well. I don't know.
Maybe, but all that's getting better year after year. Okay. They're all improving. And another, big thinker that I'm a big fan of is David Friedman, the son of Milton Friedman. Okay. And he pointed out that, okay, maybe pollution is bad, but living with no pollution is absolutely disastrous, right? You're going to die pretty much right away. So the question is, how much pollution do we want in the world in order to, because, to make a shirt or the chair that I'm sitting or the computer that I'm using and having this chat on with, all of that required some pollution. If we brought the entire world to have zero pollution, almost every human being on the planet is going to die, right? You wouldn't even be able to have fire to cook your food. So the question is, what's the right amount of pollution to have? Not that should we have zero pollution.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
I think it actually harkens back to the debate last night. Trump said we want clean air and water. That was his response in regards to climate change, whether he believes it or not. Not necessarily answering the question, but yeah, I think we all want clean air and water, while still having, of course, a suitable lifestyle, a modern lifestyle. But Tranny Transhumanist asks, will you get version? I know. Well, it looks like you met this person. He asked, will you get version 1 of Neuralink or wait for version 2+? I remember briefly talking about BMIs with Roger at 2018 Anarchapulco. And if you want to explain Neuralink for those who might not know.
Yeah, so this kind of comes back to Ray Kurzweil, who's presenting the idea of these things decades ago. But the idea is, at some point, right now, almost all of us are cyborgs, and we don't really realize it, right? So the very first generation of being a cyborg were maybe eyeglasses, right? People that have poor eyesight, they wear eyeglasses outside their eyes. And then the
Yeah.
next generation was like contact lenses. They put the human augmenting thing right on top of their eyeballs. And then, I don't know how clear the resolution is, but look, I have an earpiece in. This helps me hear somebody on the other piece of the world. That's part of, being a cyborg, right? And then it's attached to this computer that's sitting on the desk here. That's part of it. And then here, everybody likes to be able to remember every phone number and every name and every person. Well, I carry this thing around in my pocket all day, every day, all the time, where I have every single person's name and phone number and email and all sorts of information right here. And it's in my pocket. And I remember when I went to prison, that was one of the hardest things, was not having my cell phone, because now part of who I was had been separated from me. And so it felt like part of my brain had been extracted, and I no longer had access to it.
Yeah,
and it was a really, really big deal. And so right now, this phone I keep in my pocket, but what's the next step? Well, we can implant that directly into my mind somehow, where I don't even have to take it out and flip around on a screen and take a look at all that. I'll be able to just access it directly from some sort of interface in my mind. And so that's what, Elon Musk and others are working on, these direct, brain to computer human interfaces. And so eventually, rather than having to, stupid earpieces in my ear and connected to a big laptop, it'll just be able to be directly inside my brain somehow, or attached somehow to external devices, where I can just, close my eyes and see whatever it is I want to see. And, really smart people are working on exactly those things. So the question, will I get version 1? Yeah, maybe after it's been tested on some other humans before me. I don't want to be the first human. But there's another great book. I forget what the author's name was. It was decades ago. It was called I, Cyborg, by maybe Kevin something or other. And such a fascinating book. And so this guy, a couple of decades ago, he was implanting RFID chips in his arm, and then using it to open doors and turn on lights. And like, this is the first step. And I'm happy to let him, experiment with that sort of stuff. And once they get a decent product, yeah, I'll sign up for that later. And they've already done things where they connect the nerves from one person's hand to a computer, transmit over the internet, and then connect it to another human being. And they can feel what the person's hand is doing and touching. And so you can like share feelings from one human being to another over computers. So like, it's getting there. It's not just wild science fiction talk. It's going to get there. So at some point, I think it'll be just as common having a brain implant as it is having an iPhone or an Android device in your pocket. So.
Yeah. Do you get worried about that at all? Because obviously we're using AI for manipulation in some ways, for surveillance, for advertising, because that's where the dollars are at. Do you see that trajectory heading? Because personally, that's where I see it going. And I used to be a lot more optimistic when I first read The Singularity is Near by Ray Kurtzweil. But recently, just with the direction that humanity has decided to go, and with those who have the levers of control, it doesn't seem like it might be the most beneficial. It might be exploitative of folks, which is why I think, integrating them maybe with DAGs or blockchains is a good idea, where something also might be stored locally instead of over a cloud where a centralized operator can really mess with you. Do you have any thoughts around that? Like, do you think that we're going to be okay with the direction we're going with AI? And it's, I don't know, the singularity of that direction.
Yeah, I don't know is the short answer. And that's the other thing. Like, there's, billions and billions of stars with billions and billions of planets. Where are the aliens? Right? Do they all wind up killing themselves when they start getting this technology and merge with machines, and then one machine blows up everybody? Like, where are the aliens? But so that gives you a reason to be worried about all this. But am I worried personally?
Fermi paradox.
No, yeah, exactly, the Fermi paradox. But am I worried personally? No. I'm too happy and optimistic of a person to be cowering in fear. And I'm not going to be a Ted Kaczynski Unabomber type hiding in the woods with no technology and this and that. Life is more fun being a happy person than being a paranoid, terrified person and it's not stoppable, right? Like the progress isn't going to stop. At the very, very best, it could be slowed down, and then you're just, delaying, humankind's eventual demise. But it would still wind up happening. But no, I'm super happy, optimistic person on everything. And life's more fun being a happy, optimistic person than a negative Nelly.
Yeah, I'm one of those people who's kind of woo-woo out there and does think that our thoughts have power and influences the world around us as well in a big way, right? So I think by being positive, just doing that alone, just the way you think about it, could eventually lead to a more optimistic outcome, even if it's only in your mind. but maybe the world's an illusion. Yeah, that's a good approach. I have a question here from Satoshi, defender of Bitcoin. He said, if a cryptocurrency is anonymous, like BCH, I don't think BCH is anonymous, but maybe there is something.
Check out cashfusion.com and you combine that with reusable payment codes, and you get Bitcoin Cash in the same sort of ballpark of privacy as Monero. It's really awesome. So you can check out Cashfusion. And I always get it wrong. I think it's .com, but it might be .org. So you can check both. Cashfusion.com.
Okay, awesome. So BCH, maybe using Cashfusion and XMR, if they're anonymous, how can a business get legal recourse against a supplier if the supplier defaults and no proof on the transaction exists because anon? I know that's something the BSV people really get behind as well, which I don't think we've ever talked about, but so feel free to say whatever you'd like about BSV, but they do believe that the legal structure BSV is trying to follow is more sustainable. So do you have any thoughts around that? Do we need that? Like,
I think if you want your cryptocurrency to be perfectly legal for everything all the time, just go use your Visa card. Just go use your PayPal, right? What do you need a cryptocurrency for? You can do all of it with a centralized, fully legal, and fully compliant payment platform, right? So go use PayPal. I think you've missed the entire point. The entire point of cryptocurrencies is that by technological design, they are beyond the reach of the law. They're above the law. That's why, imagine if Bitcoin could have been shut down by governments, they probably would have shut it down from right out of the gate. And it's the fact that Bitcoin can't be shut down. We should ask the BSVers this: if they pass a law saying BSV needs to shut down their blockchain, are they going to obey and shut down their BSV blockchain? I hope the answer would be no. Which is just a lot of the stuff I see from some of these BSVers are silly. But then there's other BSV fans that I'm very, very sympathetic to their way of thinking. But the ones that say that the blockchains all need to be legally compliant about everything all the time, just go use your Visa card.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good response. Asai Ikinmin says, will Bitcoin Cash integrate into DeFi? Which I guess we got some answers about maybe today, with at least run BCH existing.
And check out anyhedge.com. They're really busy doing that sort of thing there, and that's real exciting to see it happen on a really scalable blockchain. And again, this isn't meant in any way to bash Ethereum. Like, Ethereum's amazing. And I remember I went to the most recent DevCon as well in Osaka, Japan, towards the end of last year.
I missed that
and,
one.
It was just amazing, the amount of brain power and enthusiasm and smart people doing amazing things there. But Ethereum's having actual technical scaling problems. Bitcoin Cash can reach several times more transactions every single day easily than Ethereum can, but there just hasn't been the same sort of amount of activity happening on it yet. But I think that's a real big opportunity. And Wayne Gretzky said, "You skate to where the puck is going to be, not where it already is." As an investor in the cryptocurrency space, I think you want to invest your money where the capital is going to be, not where it already is. And it already is in Ethereum. And I think there will be more in Ethereum. But I think there's going to be a heck of a lot more in Bitcoin Cash if they can build a stable platform and there's cool DeFi tools with privacy tools like Cashfusion and easy to make tokens like at mint.bitcoin.com. Like, this is a really powerful platform that I think more and more people are going to be involved with. And then you have, BitPay and Coinbase make it easy for people to onboard as well too.
Excellent. Crypto Panda asks, who are your role models in the business world? I guess besides Ray Kurtzweil.
Yes, I don't know if I'd call Ray Kurzweil a role model in the business world, but the thinkers that really helped me understand business were the economists, right? So the Murray Rothbards, the Ludwig von Miseses, or there's only one Mises, but David Friedman. There's another interesting book called Law's Order, which was really interesting, and it basically just talks about all the different decisions entrepreneurs have to make in different situations. And Stephen Landsberg, I think, was another one, the armchair economist, just really made me see the world so much more differently than I had. And of course, Henry Hazlitt's The Economics of One Lesson, have to plug that one every chance I have. But when you read these books, you'll see the world more clearly, and you realize that money isn't just something that you use to buy things. It's the thing that it's the most commonly accepted good that people trade with everything, but it's what communicates the information to every single person on the planet. In fact, there's another book, you can read it in probably an hour, called I, Pencil by Leonard Reed. And the book starts out by saying it's told from the point of view of a pencil. And the pencil says there's not a single human being alive on the planet that knows how to make me. And you hear that and you think, what do you mean? Everybody knows how to make a pencil. It's so simple and it's just, little thing, but no. He goes into the detail of how you have to cut down the trees to get the wood, and then you need the chainsaws that cut down the tree that were made with, iron ore that was dug out of the ground, and then you have to refine the oil to make the gasoline that runs in the chainsaw, and then you have to make the yellow paint, and they do something or other to make the ink that goes in the paint, and then they chop down rubber trees to get the rubber pencil eraser on the end, and they have to distill that, and it goes through all this amazing stuff, and the trucks and the delivery things and the packaging and all the different stuff, and you realize, wait a minute, he's right. There's not a single human being on the planet that knows how to make something as simple as a pencil that you can buy for just a few minutes of your time, worth of labor. And it's just incredible. And then when you think of a pencil to, the laptop I'm on, or the earphones, or an iPhone, and it's just incredible the amount of cooperation that happens all around the world. And when I saw that, I realized that, any businessman is doing anywhere in the world is competing with other people to cooperate better. Businesses are competing to cooperate more effectively and more efficiently. And so that's all any business is doing, is you're moving something from where it's worth less to where it's worth more. And the pricing system is what gives you that information of where it's worth less to where it's worth more. And so when a customer is willing to pay you to do something, that's his incentive that, hey, you need to do more of that. If customers aren't willing to pay you to do something, that's an incentive that the market wants you to go and spend your time doing something else. And that applies equally to ABC. The fact that the market's not willing to pay you to do something means you should go and spend your time focused on something that the market is willing to pay you to do. And in fact, there are lots of talks amongst a lot of big Bitcoin Cash holders of just plain paying Omri to leave Bitcoin Cash alone. That's how passionate people feel about it. It would be basically paying an extortion fee. But that's an example. Like, would paying an extortion fee be preferable to having Omri disrupt the platform of Bitcoin Cash that people are trying to build on? Maybe. In fact, you know what? I should tell the story. I reached out to Omri about that specifically, and I asked him, I said, how much would I have to pay you to just stop with this IFP nonsense and stop threatening doing the fork and doing that? And his initial reply, and it was in there were some other people in the chat room there, I don't know, maybe a dozen. And his initial reply is, you have to pay me 22 million Bitcoin Cash. And for those that don't know, 22 million Bitcoin Cash don't exist. So he basically said, you have to pay me more than all the Bitcoin Cash in the world.
I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I replied to him. I said, see, this is the exact sort of bad, sarcastic attitude that I'm complaining about, that is detrimental to people wanting to build on top of Bitcoin. When the lead developer has this sarcastic, rude attitude towards one of the people that have, really done a lot to push Bitcoin Cash forward. And then he replied, and he gave a little bit of math behind it, and he said he would just leave Bitcoin Cash alone and stop with the IFP stuff if I paid him $200 million, which I also think is a crazy amount. And it just really shows that at this point, he doesn't care about peer-to-peer cash for the world. He's just looking to get, $200 million or 22 million Bitcoin or whatever. So
yeah. Interesting. Yeah, I remember watching that on I think it was the BTC subreddit, one of those subreddits. I'm like you, I just browse everywhere, and I saw that happen. It kind of ties into our next question by AK, talking about Amori. Why couldn't you ever get along with Amori? I think you've touched on a little bit of that already. What are your reasons? And as arguably the most important BCH leaders with the same philosophy and cap, so anarcho-capitalism, the fact this relationship never worked has destroyed a lot of value in BCH, and I never understood why. I mean, hopefully...
I totally agree with the person asking the question, and I think this is the first public interview that I've ever given where I've complained about Omri. Omri's complained a huge amount about me and Bitcoin.com and claimed that we're bad for Bitcoin Cash and all sorts of nonsense, and I've been silent the last 3 years as he's done that, just because I don't need to have a public fight over that. But the IFP, I think, is kind of the last straw, and here I am saying that Omri may be a good software developer, but he is a horrible, horrible, horrible community developer. And so people need to stick at what they have their comparative advantage with. And, building communities is not where Omri's advantage is. So the person that asked that question is exactly right. And it's frustrating for me because check my Twitter, check my social media profiles. I've been silent about saying anything bad about Omri ever until, basically now.
Okay, fair. Also, I have a question here for the same.
It sure wasn't. So.
Okay. Given the lack of leadership in BCHN, shouldn't we expect a contentious fork every couple of years? If not, why not? The IFP, as evil as it seems, is a much more stable type of governance, and is very unlikely to lead to contentious forks unless Amori goes off the rails. I mean,
well, I think he is going off the rails right now as part of it, but. and there's only so many hours in the day, so I haven't followed BSV very closely. But the thing that they've said about building a stable platform and locking down the protocol so everybody has a stable platform to build on, I am totally on board with that. They're saying the right thing. I don't know if they succeeded in doing that or not over there, but that's what Bitcoin Cash should be doing. This hard forking every 6 months, no matter what, that's been disastrous for Bitcoin Cash, and I'd like to see that stop.
Does BCHN stop that? Do you know?
Yeah, I think there's talks about stopping that, or at the very least, like limiting that to like maybe every 18 months or something other than 6 months. 6 months. I hate to say it, but the older I get, the faster the time goes by. I blink my eyes and another 6 months has gone by.
Yeah. That was Amori's kind of point as well. If they didn't do a good job, that every 6 months the community had an opportunity to again do a different client or something. So
it's happening right now, right? The whole community's moved to BCHN, so ABC is getting fired right now.
Yeah. Okay. So even before getting a shot, maybe they should have gotten a shot to try, or would that completely be wrong to see if they were able to push Bitcoin adoption every 6 months, just more than the 8% that they're charging? Would that?
How many billions of dollars does Ripple have in the bank to fund development, right? How much money does Dash have? There's Zcash has a developer fund. Like there's all these other coins out there. Bitcoin, of any flavor, has never ever had that. That's a huge violation of like the social contract within Bitcoin Cash to try and do that now. So if you're a fan of having a bunch of money to pay for developers from the Coinbase, pick another coin. Don't alter Bitcoin Cash. That's my stand.
Maybe it would work out better for Amori, and I'm just thinking out loud here, proposing that if he did implement replay attack protection, decided to go with a completely different ticker symbol, it would be actually better and more sustainable for Bitcoin ABC, because we all know, again, people want to be ahead of the curve. They want to get into early investments. I don't know if you heard about this DeFi project that happened 2 days ago, Eminence Finance. Did you hear about that debacle?
I didn't hear about that one.
Just staging contracts were put up on the Ethereum blockchain from a popular developer of a DeFi platform called Yearn Finance. It was recently added to Coinbase. So people were following him on Ethereum, and they noticed that he put up these contracts overnight related to a game metaverse economy he was creating, and they put $15 million into these smart contracts that were not even a foundation for what he hoped to build out over the next 3 weeks plus, he said. But he neglected to say that before, and it was completely drained yesterday. Well, like 2 nights ago, it was completely drained of those funds, and eventually the attacker gave $8 million back. They're going to be giving back on a pre-hack snapshot. But such a weird situation.
Become easy go with the money out there, though, apparently.
Exactly. People are willing to put money early on if they're expecting some sort of result. So maybe that would be a good route for Amori to take, is to just concede, say, I'm going to go this route, and we're going to try Bitcoin Cash development or some sort of fork of it. I don't know, whatever you would call that, BCH Classic. And we are going to try to do this with an 8% developer fund and compete with BCH and prove that the market values this and grow our market cap.
I think you're right. I love that idea. And maybe he'll hear this and run with that, because then every single Bitcoin Cash holder at the time of Amori's fork would then own some of his coins.
Yeah.
And if there's replay protection, then they're not going to be incentivized to go and dump their coins on exchange to push the ABC hash rate down because the price is lower. They might just hold both and see what happens. In fact, that's probably what I would wind up doing. Whereas if there's a contentious hard fork, okay, well, and there's no replay protection, I better make sure I sell some of my ABC version of the coin to make sure that Bitcoin Cash continues to have the higher price and higher exchange rate. And the fact that Amori's so upset about not being paid directly for it shows that he didn't hold on to any of his Bitcoin from 2012, or he wouldn't be so concerned about it. Whereas I still have plenty of Bitcoin Cash I can do that with. So.
YOLO money. I'm just joking. Is the future of BCH development purely reliant on donations? I guess this is assuming that BCHN was the leading client leading in past November. Assuming donations don't work to attract enough talented devs, what is the solution to further develop BCH? As Roger knows, it is very expensive to do dev and compete with other blockchains on features.
Yeah, so I've been saying it for a long time, and I think it's still true. The businesses that are running on top of Bitcoin Cash should pay for the protocol development work that they want to have done. And actually, if I can gripe one more thing about ABC today. So like they've been complaining they don't have enough money and this and that. And I don't know if it's with promises of the future IFP or if with money they already have, but they literally successfully hired away one of Bitcoin.com's best developers there. And we have lots of fantastic developers. So, but they hired away one of our guys recently. He's going to leave us here in another 48 hours or something. End of this month is his last day to go and work at ABC. And so this is the guy that made. If you've used gift.bitcoin.com, he's behind that. If you use the dividend payment tool, he's behind that. He's a guy that's done a lot of amazing things. And so this is an example of ABC siphoning away talented people that are building on top of businesses that earn money within Bitcoin Cash ecosystem to go and work on things that aren't earning money within Bitcoin Cash's ecosystem. I think that's a horrible misallocation of resources there. And I'm really disappointed to see Omri busy doing that. So.
Did you try to do a counteroffer at all, or did you just say, all right?
Yeah, I know we talked about it a bit too, and his view, I think this is very common with software developers, is, and I like the guy. I'm not going to give his first name here at the moment, but like, I really like the guy. I like him a lot, but I think he's a better software engineer or a software developer than a business developer. And from his point of view, he thinks that Bitcoin Cash has a better shot at becoming money for the world if there's this IFP to pay for developers to do more stuff. I think he's overlooking the fact that it's going to shatter the community, and a bunch of the people are just going to, big holders are just going to basically say, all right, see you later. Maybe I'll head to Ethereum. Maybe I'll head to Monero. Maybe I'll head to, Ava Labs. There's lots and lots of choices out there of lots of interesting projects out there.
Are you a fan of Avalanche and Ava Labs? Are you looking at it?
I'm a fan of anything that works fast, cheaply, and reliably. And from what I've seen of Ava Labs, it looks really, really cool. I didn't participate in their initial pre-sale or whatever because the valuation seemed to be on the high side for my taste. And I thought maybe I'll be able to buy some more in the market later. But yeah, it looks fantastic. Who doesn't like finalized transactions in less than a second? That's wonderful.
Yeah,
and huge throughput capacity. Sounds fantastic, but believe it when it's ready and up and running and actually doing that. So
yeah,
it looks wonderful.
Sure. Do you believe in BCHN and other dev teams' quality as you believed in BCH ABC devs? Do you think that they can guide Bitcoin Cash in the right direction moving forward?
Better? There was another argument put forth, and I forget his difficult French name, but basically he argued that ABC is far more competent than Bitcoin Unlimited, than Bitcoin Cash Node, than any of these other guys. And he wrote, I feel bad, I can't remember his name at the moment, but he wrote a really substantial, post saying how ABC is a more competent group of devs than any of the other full nodes, and that's why they deserve, and that's why the IFP is okay. And I replied to him, I said, even if everything you said is true, and it very well could be that ABC has been more competent than Bitcoin Unlimited had those serious bugs, the whole scaling war could have gone the entire other way, where Bitcoin, big block Bitcoin, was the default Bitcoin, and the small block SegWit coin was something else. If Bitcoin Unlimited didn't have those two bugs within the course of 3 weeks in it, it was a big giant disaster during the debate within Bitcoin. And ABC did a better job. And to Omri's credit, he reached out to me in, 2014 or 15 or something, complaining about Bitcoin Unlimited's lack of attention to bug detail and how they're going to have bugs. And Omri did complain about that. But to Bitcoin Unlimited's credit, they reached out to me and said, hey, we have another crazy Luke Jr. type on our hands here with Omri, a guy who can't get along with anybody and is just toxic and abrasive and rude with everybody. And turns out both sides were right there. And so what do we do about that? I don't see how ABC being more competent in regards to not having bugs justifies them getting 8% of the block reward. I see those as totally unrelated things. Maybe the ABC is more competent than every other full node implementation, but that doesn't mean they all of a sudden deserve 8% of the block reward. That's where my head is at in regards to that.
Is there a way to convince them? If you had to tell Omri right now in this video, if you were speaking to him directly, what would you say to him to convince him that it's not the right step forward here?
The right step forward, he can do it and it's fine, but it's not Bitcoin Cash, it's not BCH. He needs to start his own ecosystem rather than hijack an existing ecosystem. And you'll engender a lot of goodwill from the existing Bitcoin Cash ecosystem if he just implements replay protection and chooses his new ticker symbol and new coin name. And I think and we know Omri's a competent dev. He's a difficult person to get along with, but he's a competent dev. And so I think a lot of us would then want to hold the new ABC coin, and let's see what magic Omri can do with this new protocol and this new chain, and maybe it'll be be a good thing. Whereas if he doesn't implement replay protection, he tries to hijack Bitcoin Cash and steal the ticker, he's going to have a lot of angry Bitcoin Cash people out there that will be really upset with him.
Yeah, I asked him about that. Reputational risk. Like, is this worth putting your entire reputation that you've built on the line? But it seems like it was his final card. So it does.
Thrown the steering wheel out of the car window. Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Roger. I have just two very, very serious questions to wrap up with here. One is by Grateful Wolf, and this is actually a very common question. How do you like life in the Kits? How is life out there? What made you move there? Was it difficult getting citizenship?
Yeah. So actually, that's great pitch. So I wish I could say I was in St. Kitts, but I'm not. So the beautiful background you might be able to see behind me is actually Antigua, which is the neighboring island to St. Kitts, where they recently, or not recently, they basically opened their borders here. People can come in and out, and we're having a great time. Lots of people are here. All sorts of stuff is happening. St. Kitts still has their borders closed. Nobody's allowed in or out of the country. And month after month, they've been saying that they're going to reopen, and they were supposed to reopen again on October 1st. And just a day or two ago, they extended the delay again until November at this point. It's been really disappointing. But the good news is the first physical Bitcoin Cash ATM machines just arrived here in Antigua. We have more than half a dozen restaurants accepting Bitcoin Cash here, and we're going to really spread Bitcoin Cash across the entire country here in Antigua. And if you want to get citizenship here in Antigua, you can pay for the entire thing in Bitcoin Cash. Just go and visit antiguahelp.com right there, and it's actually with the former Attorney General of the country of Antigua. And so you can pay for the whole thing in Bitcoin Cash. Wow. And if you come live down here, you'll have no income tax, no capital gains tax, no anything at all. So wow. It's really, really wonderful on that front. So,
how do they fund that? How do they fund that without taxes?
By selling passports. So it's really, really wonderful.
Okay. What was life like with COVID and what's been going on over the last year? How did that impact your business and the way that you approach your day?
Yeah, I'm not a COVID denier, but I am a denier that like the government lockdowns have helped. I think if anything, it's made it worse, right? Like people are at home depressed and, and don't have any sunlight, don't have any exercise, like they then become overweight and like, it suppresses your immune system. And like that makes people way more likely to, I don't know if you can hear it. The rain is really coming down behind me here. But,
well, I see a little sprinkle there. Yeah.
Yeah. The lockdowns, I think, have really been a far, far, far bigger disaster than the coronavirus itself. And I think it's time for the world to end the lockdown and basically let people get back to normal in regards to their lives.
Did that change how Bitcoin.com worked at all? Maybe remotely more or anything like that?
A little bit. We were all computer nerds on our computers all the time anyhow, and you can kind of do that for most places in the world. So it changed things a little bit, but not a huge amount.
Okay. And then the final question I have here from Julio, who asks, do you have any exotic pets like tigers or saltwater iguanas? No exotic pets. I travel too much most of the time to have any pets at all. So. All right. Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Roger, for taking the time to be on the show. I want to welcome everyone to go ahead and clip out any sections of the video. I know I had someone ask me, sorry, my exotic pet, the green cheek is freaking out.
If you can enable me to share my screen, though, I have some Bitcoin Cash to give away to all the viewers here.
Oh, that's right. Maybe is there? Sometimes Zoom gets weird.
Screen sharing. If it breaks something, we'll just have to, I don't know, put it in the live stream later. So.
Oh, absolutely. Maybe we can do something if it does. Let me go ahead and try enabling screen share here.
Yeah, we'll try, and if it breaks, then I'll just give it to you, and you can insert it on the YouTube video later. So, or library, wherever else you're going to post it.
Okay. Yeah. I'll, if anything, just clip some sort of video for me. Yeah, it's not working for me to enable it right now, and with my application, it doesn't
now
really work.
People can watch it again once this is uploaded to YouTube, and we'll have the free Bitcoin Cash giveaway in there later.
if you hung out long enough, then hopefully you're one of the beneficiaries. And you're welcome to go ahead and clip out any section. People were asking me if they could take a part of this interview and put it up somewhere. You guys are welcome to do anything. I just hope to share the ideas that were presented both in this video and with Amaury's video, so everyone can come to their own decision. And yeah, thank you everyone for being here one last time. Thanks a lot, Roger, for your time in this important, I would say another important historical moment in crypto. Take care.
Yeah, thank you so much. And make your own token over at mint.bitcoin.com. It couldn't be easier.
Alrighty. If the regulations were clear, I feel like I would, but at this point, I would be scared that it would end up on Uniswap and it would get pumped to the moon, and then people would accuse me of creating a Telegram group to pump it. I don't know. Honestly, it's a weird situation unless I had a real need for a token, to be honest, Roger. At this point, I don't really have a need for a token unless I made like a collectible sort of token that literally I would just give away and say, here, this has no value, right? I don't expect it to have value, but even if it traded on some sort of exchange without my permission, I do have to wonder if I'd be liable for something for that. I don't know.
That's kind of how Bitcoin got started, right?
That's a good point. That's a good point. Fair. All right. I'll consider it. Thank you so much, Roger. Take care, everyone.